The date was May 29, 1985. The city was Brussels, Belgium. Its Heysel Stadium prepared to host the European Cup final. This was a football match of immense importance. Liverpool, the reigning English champions, were set to play against Juventus, the Italian giants. Football enthusiasts from all corners of Europe eagerly anticipated this contest between two of the continent's premier clubs. The stage was meticulously set for what should have been a memorable night of sporting prowess. However, the evening would become infamous for entirely different tragic reasons. An air thick with anticipation also carried an undercurrent of palpable tension, a foreboding sense of unease. Heysel Stadium itself was old. It was visibly in a state of disrepair. Many parts of the structure were crumbling. Serious concerns regarding its suitability to host such a major international event had been voiced well before the final. The facilities were clearly inadequate to cope with the tens of thousands of supporters descending upon it. Ticketing arrangements were chaotic. Crucially, the segregation of rival fans was poorly planned and implemented. This confluence of factors created an inherently dangerous and volatile environment. The stadium was fundamentally unprepared for the intense pressures of a European final, especially one involving such passionate and numerous rival fan groups. This critical lack of preparation would soon lead to devastating and unforgettable consequences for many. Approximately 1 hour before the scheduled kickoff, serious trouble began to unfold. Liverpool supporters, located in a section adjacent to a supposedly neutral area, breached a flimsy temporary fence. This fence was all that separated them from Block Z. They charged towards the section. Block Z, however, was not truly neutral. It contained a large number of Juventus supporters, many of whom were families and ordinary fans. Panic immediately erupted among those caught in Block Z. They desperately attempted to flee the advancing surge of rival fans. In the ensuing chaos, people were inexorably pressed against a concrete retaining wall at the side of the terrace, a structure never designed to withstand such force. The pressure on those trapped became utterly unbearable. The old, poorly maintained perimeter wall could not withstand the immense human pressure. It suddenly gave way and collapsed. People were crushed beneath the falling concrete and steel. Others were trampled in the desperate stampede that followed as people tried to escape the horror. Some unfortunate individuals fell from the high terrace onto the ground below. The scenes were ones of utter chaos, disbelief, and indescribable horror. 39 people tragically lost their lives that evening in Brussels. The majority of these victims were Italian supporters of Juventus. In addition to the fatalities, around 600 other people sustained injuries, many of them very serious. It was a human catastrophe unfolding live before the shocked eyes of the world watching the broadcast. Despite the scale of the unfolding tragedy and the evident loss of life, the decision was controversially made to proceed with the football match. Officials, including UEFA representatives and Belgian authorities, reportedly feared that cancelling the game entirely at that late stage could provoke even further violence and disorder, both inside and outside the stadium. They held a grim belief that allowing the match to be played might, paradoxically, help to restore some semblance of order, however hollow. Most players were only informed of the deaths very late in the proceedings, or for some not until after the game had concluded. The kickoff was delayed by more than an hour. This decision to play remains a subject of intense debate and profound controversy to this very day. Many felt, and still feel, it showed a profound disrespect to the victims and their grieving families. News of the disaster spread rapidly across the globe. It sent immediate shockwaves throughout Europe and the entire football world. The initial reports emerging from Heysel were confused and often contradictory. However, the horrifying scale of the tragedy soon became chillingly clear. Governments across Europe expressed their shock and condemnation. Football authorities faced widespread criticism for the glaring failures in safety and security that had allowed such an event to occur. The media coverage was intense and unrelenting. The images broadcast from Heysel were deeply disturbing and distressing. They starkly illustrated the darkest potential of the beautiful game when things go catastrophically wrong. This event compelled football to undertake a period of deep and uncomfortable introspection. The immediate aftermath of the Heysel disaster saw severe and far-reaching repercussions, particularly for English football. English football clubs were collectively held responsible for the violent actions of their supporters that evening. UEFA, European football's governing body, moved swiftly to impose an indefinite ban on all English clubs from participating in any European competitions. This comprehensive ban would ultimately last for 5 long years, isolating English football from the continental stage. Liverpool FC, as the club involved in the final, received an additional year's suspension on top of the general ban. This marked the beginning of a very dark and difficult period for English football, its international reputation severely tarnished. Juventus eventually won the European Cup final by a score of 1-0. The French international Michel Platini scored the decisive winning goal from a penalty kick, but the victory understandably felt completely empty and devoid of joy. The Juventus players celebrated mutedly, if they celebrated at all, aware of the horrific circumstances. The trophy was presented in a subdued atmosphere, yet the sporting result was entirely and irrevocably overshadowed by the profound human tragedy that had preceded it. The 1985 European Cup is not remembered for the football that was played on the pitch. It is, and always will be, remembered for the 39 lives tragically lost. It became an enduring grim symbol of what can happen when fan behavior, stadium safety, and basic human decency are neglected. The Heysel disaster served as a profound and undeniable wake-up call for the entire world of football. It starkly forced football authorities, governments and clubs to confront the deeply serious and intertwined issues of inadequate stadium safety and escalating football hooliganism. Before the events of May 1985, many football stadiums across Europe were old, dilapidated and fundamentally unsafe for large crowds. Crowd management techniques were often rudimentary and reactive rather than proactive and preventative. The tragedy at Heysel highlighted, in the most brutal way possible, the urgent and non-negotiable need for comprehensive and far-reaching reforms within the sport. It became unmistakably clear that the status quo was untenable. Things could not continue as they had been. The safety and well-being of spectators had to become the absolute paramount concern for everyone involved. In the United Kingdom, the Taylor Report would follow 4 years later, primarily prompted by the even greater tragedy at Hillsborough in 1989. However, Heysel had already brutally exposed many of the same underlying problems with stadium infrastructure and safety protocols. The movement towards all-seater stadiums in major European leagues gained significant momentum following these disasters. Old, crumbling terraces, which were often overcrowded and dangerous, began to be replaced by modern seating. New safety features were systematically incorporated into both new stadium designs and the refurbishment of existing grounds. These essential upgrades included stronger, more intelligently designed barriers, vastly improved and clearly marked escape routes, and enhanced surveillance systems, such as comprehensive CCTV coverage. The overarching aim was to create significantly safer, more secure and more comfortable environments for all football fans. Policing and stewarding practices at football matches underwent a significant transformation in the wake of Heysel. There was a discernible and necessary shift towards a greater emphasis on intelligence-led policing strategies. This involved better information, gathering on potentially troublesome fan groups, and more targeted interventions. The segregation of rival fans inside stadiums became much stricter and was more effectively enforced through better stadium design and stewarding. Restrictions on the sale and consumption of alcohol in and around stadiums during match days became more common in many countries. Authorities increasingly understood that proactive measures designed to prevent disorder before it could start were far more effective than purely reactive responses once trouble had erupted. These new strategies were developed to manage large, passionate crowds far more safely and effectively. Heysel contributed, albeit slowly and painfully, to a gradual but significant shift in the prevailing football culture. There was a growing, widespread realization that the violence, intimidation and hooliganism that had become associated with the game, particularly during the 1970s and 1980s, were utterly unacceptable and deeply damaging to the sport. Concerted efforts began to be made by clubs, authorities and fan groups to make attending football matches a more family-friendly and welcoming experience for everyone. Clubs and supporter organizations started to work together more closely on vital safety initiatives and anti-violence campaigns. The disaster underscored the collective responsibility of everyone involved in football, from the individual fan to the highest echelons of club and football governance, to ensure that safety and respect remained at the forefront of the game. Today, May 29, 2025, marks exactly 40 years since the Heysel Stadium disaster tragically unfolded. This significant anniversary is, above all, a solemn occasion. It is a poignant time for remembrance, for quiet reflection, and for honoring those who were lost. The passage of 4 long decades has not and cannot diminish the profound pain and grief still felt by the families and friends of the 39 victims. Nor has time erased the dark, indelible stain that this tragedy left on the history of football. Remembering Heysel is absolutely crucial. It ensures that we continue to honor those who died and those who suffered immense trauma. It also serves as a vital, enduring lesson for current and future generations of football supporters and administrators worldwide. Liverpool FC and Juventus FC, the two clubs whose encounter was overshadowed by the tragedy, along with their respective supporter bases, continue to pay heartfelt tribute to the victims of Heysel. Memorial services are regularly held, particularly around anniversaries. Plaques and monuments have been erected and stand as permanent, silent reminders of that dreadful night in Brussels. At Anfield, Liverpool's home ground, and in Turin, the home of Juventus, the memory of the 39 individuals who perished is respectfully and diligently kept alive. The wider global football community also consistently acknowledges the anniversary of the disaster. This shared remembrance helps to ensure that such a catastrophic event is never forgotten. It fosters a sense of unity born from shared grief and strengthens a collective commitment to preventing any recurrence. The Heysel disaster severely strained relations between the English and Italian football communities for many, many years. In the immediate aftermath, and for a long time afterwards, there was understandable anger, recrimination and blame directed across national lines. The healing process has consequently been a long, slow and often difficult journey. Over the intervening decades, however, gestures of reconciliation, acts of shared remembrance and dialogue between fan groups and club officials have helped, gradually, to bridge the divide that was created. Football, for all its potential for tribalism, also possesses a remarkable power to unite people. The shared sorrow over Heysel has, in some important ways, forged a bond of deeper understanding between the communities, built on the mutual commitment to a safer, more respectful game for all. The lasting legacy of Heysel is undeniably profound and multifaceted. It directly led to tangible, life-saving improvements in stadium safety standards and fan management protocols across the globe. It forced the world of football to confront its darker elements, particularly the scourge of hooliganism, with a new sense of urgency and seriousness. But perhaps its most important and enduring legacy is the constant, sobering reminder of the devastating human cost of negligence, poor planning and unchecked violence. Heysel stands as a stark and permanent warning. It powerfully underscores the fundamental responsibility of everyone involved in organizing and attending football matches to protect the safety and well-being of every single person present. 40 years on, the long shadow of Heysel still profoundly informs how we approach, manage